On an ordinary afternoon, in what should have been one of the safest places for a child, a quiet neighborhood surrounded by familiar faces, something happened that would leave an entire community asking the same haunting question for years to come. How can a little girl simply disappear, only to be found hidden in a place investigators had already searched?
This is the story of Paislee Shultis, a young girl whose disappearance puzzled authorities for more than 2 years.
Before a shocking discovery inside a secret hiding space changed everything. It is a case that isn't built around a mysterious stranger lurking in the shadows or an unknown serial offender crossing state lines. Instead, it is a trust, family, custody, deception, and the extraordinary lengths some people will go to keep a secret
Alive. Every clue seemed to point in one direction, yet the truth remained hidden only a few feet away
from investigators. And when officers finally uncovered what had been concealed, even experienced detectives were stunned. Today,
reconstruct the timeline, examine the investigation step by step, and explore how a missing child managed to remain invisible,
despite repeated police visits to the very house where she was ultimately found. To understand how everything unfolded, we can have to begin long before the dramatic rescue that made national headlines. Paislee was a little girl living in New York, surrounded by adults who were supposed to protect her. Like many custody disputes across America, tensions existed
between family members over who should legally care for the child. Family court proceedings are often emotionally exhausting, especially
when parents disagree about what is best for their children. In Paislee's case, legal authorities had determined where she
should live. Those decisions weren't made overnight. Courts generally examine evidence, living conditions, parental fitness, and the child's
overall welfare before making custody rulings. But court orders only work if everyone involved chooses to follow them. When
emotions replace reason, legal battles can quickly become something far more dangerous. In 2019, concerns began growing when Paislee
was no longer where authorities believed she should be. At first glance, it may have appeared to be another
custody dispute, something unfortunately not uncommon across the United States. Thousands of custody-related cases are reported every year, and
many are resolved quickly once parents cooperate with investigators. But this situation unfolded differently. As days became weeks and
weeks became months, officials began fearing that Paislee had not simply been taken during a family disagreement. Instead, they
suspected she had been deliberately hidden from the outside world. Law enforcement launched an investigation. Officers followed leads, interviewed relatives, spoke with neighbors, and attempted to determine exactly where the little girl might have been taken. The challenge wasn't a complete lack of suspects. Investigators already had strong suspicions regarding who may have been responsible. The real
challenge was proving where Paislee actually was. Without knowing her location, authorities couldn't simply force their way into every
possible residence indefinitely. Every search required legal justification, evidence, and careful coordination. During those early months, officers repeatedly focused their attention on one particular property located in Saugerties, New York. The home belonged to relatives connected to Paislee's family. From an investigative standpoint, it made sense. Family abduction cases often involve locations familiar to the child
or trusted by relatives. Investigators knew that people attempting to avoid detection frequently rely on places they believe if police
will eventually stop checking. Familiar homes, isolated cabins, and relatives' residences have all appeared throughout countless child recovery
investigations in American history. Police visited the property more than once. They questioned those inside. They searched portions of
the residence. Each visit ended the same way, with no child found. Every unsuccessful search presented investigators with a
difficult dilemma. Were they focusing on the wrong location? Had Paislee already been moved somewhere else? Or was someone
successfully deceiving law enforcement? As time passed, the investigation grew increasingly frustrating. Public attention came and went. Tips were
received, analyzed, and eliminated. Detectives continued working behind the scenes, but every lead seemed to dissolve before producing meaningful
results. Meanwhile, somewhere behind closed doors, a little girl continued living a life almost completely disconnected from the outside world. Imagine being a child during those years. Birthdays passing quietly, holidays celebrated in secrecy, No classroom filled with classmates. No playground conversations. No ordinary childhood routines that millions of American children experience every day. While investigators searched,
Life inside the hidden world continued under entirely different rules. Cases involving children often carry an emotional weight, unlike
any other investigation. Adults can choose to disappear. Children cannot legally make those decisions themselves. Every passing month increased concerns about Paislee's physical safety, emotional well-being, education, healthcare, and development. Detectives weren't simply searching for a missing person. They were racing against time to recover a child whose future remained uncertain. Behind the scenes, investigators refused
to let the case grow cold. Files remained active. New information was continually reviewed. Technology advanced. Relationships between agencies
strengthened. Every tip, no matter how insignificant it initially appeared, was documented. Experienced investigators know that many long-term missing child recoveries don't happen because of dramatic breakthroughs. Instead, they happen because someone notices one inconsistency, one statement that doesn't quite match previous interviews, one tiny detail overlooked months earlier. Eventually, investigators received new information suggesting Paislee might
still be connected to the same residence they had already visited multiple times. On paper, that almost seemed impossible.
How could a missing child remain inside a house that law enforcement had already searched? Had officers missed something? Had someone manipulated the searches? Or was there another explanation entirely? Rather than dismissing the information because previous searches, had someone manipulated the searches? Or was there another explanation entirely? Rather than dismissing the information because previous searches had failed, detectives chose to take another look. That decision would become the turning point in the entire investigation.
Returning to the property required careful planning. Officers couldn't simply assume the child would still be there.
Suspicions became obvious. Anyone hiding Paislee could move her before police had another opportunity. Every step had to be deliberate. Investigators gathered additional information, coordinated their approach, and prepared for another search. By this point, more than 2 years had passed since Paislee disappeared. 2 years. More than 700 days without certainty. More than 700 days of unanswered questions. More than 700 days during which investigators wondered whether they would ever find the little girl alive. When officers arrived once again at the house in Saugerties, the atmosphere reportedly felt familiar.
Family members interacted with investigators much as they had before. Nothing immediately stood out. The residence appeared, at first,
glance like an ordinary home. But experienced investigators understand something important. People can become remarkably comfortable maintaining deception over long periods. Confidence itself is not proof of innocence. As officers continued examining the property, one detective noticed something subtle. It wasn't a dramatic clue. There was no scream for help. No mysterious noise echoed through the house. Instead, it was a structural detail, something about a staircase that didn't seem quite right. Homes often contain unused crawl spaces, storage compartments, utility access points, and concealed construction areas. Most are completely innocent. But investigators know
unusual architecture deserves attention when searching for a missing child. The detective's curiosity grew. Why did this section of
the staircase appear different? Could there be empty space underneath? Was it simply part of the home's construction? Or was something hidden beyond it? The officers decided to investigate further. As they examined the staircase more closely, they discovered what appeared to be an opening leading into a concealed compartment beneath the steps.
Too small, many people would assume, for anyone to spend significant time inside. Yet investigators continued looking.
Flashlights illuminated the darkness beyond the hidden space. At first, visibility was limited. Dust settled across the confined area. Then, movement. Someone was inside, not one person. Two, an adult and a child. For a brief moment, years of uncertainty collapsed into a single astonishing discovery. The missing little girl investigators had searched for across more
than 2 years was alive. She had been concealed inside a hidden compartment beneath a staircase in a house
that officers had previously visited. The realization was almost unbelievable. How long had this hiding place existed? How many
times had people walked directly above it without realizing what lay underneath? How had such a confined space remained
undetected during earlier searches? Those questions would soon dominate headlines across the country. But as officers carefully brought Paislee out of the concealed area, another chapter of the investigation was only beginning. Finding the child answered the biggest question: where she was. It did not answer the equally important question: why had she been hidden there for
more than 2 years? The discovery beneath the staircase instantly transformed the investigation. After more than 2 years of
uncertainty, the most urgent objective had finally been accomplished. Paislee had been found alive. For investigators, that moment represented
the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Recovering a missing child is only the first step.
The next questions are just as important. How had she remained hidden for so long? Who had been caring for her? And how had the adults involved managed to prevent authorities from locating her despite multiple visits to the property? Officers immediately shifted their focus from searching for Paislee to securing the scene and documenting every detail.
Every room in the residence, every statement made by those present, and every physical feature of the house became
part of the investigation. Detectives knew that this was no longer simply a missing child case. It had become
investigation into the decisions and actions that had allowed a court order to be ignored for years.
The most striking aspect of the case was the location where Paislee was found. According to law enforcement, she
was concealed in a small space beneath the staircase, along with an adult. Reports described the compartment as a
cramped area that was not immediately obvious to someone casually walking through the house. Investigators have not publicly suggested that it was an elaborate, professionally constructed secret room. Rather, it was a concealed space within the home's structure that required officers to look beyond what appeared ordinary. That distinction is important because, in the aftermath of the crime, some online discussions exaggerated the discovery into something resembling a movie scene. The confirmed facts are dramatic enough on their own without embellishment. As detectives documented the area, they also worked to understand the practical reality of the daily life during the years Paislee had been missing. A child cannot remain hidden indefinitely without the active participation
of adults. Food, clothing, shelter, and supervision all require planning. Those responsible for concealing her would have had
to make continuous decisions aimed at avoiding detection. Every knock at the door, every unexpected visitor, every delivery, and every police visit would have carried the risk that the truth could be exposed. Investigators believe that maintaining such secrecy over an extended period would have required careful coordination. In family abduction cases, unlike stranger kidnappings, the child often knows the adults involved and may not fully understand the legal circumstances surrounding the situation. Young children depend
on the adults around them for information about the world. If those adults tell them to remain quiet,
we're introducing a new feature where I can read this aloud in a natural, human-like voice, not necessarily acting out of fear of a stranger, but rather trust in familiar caregivers. Following the recovery, authorities began interviewing everyone connected to the residence. Detectives sought to establish who knew Paislee was there, how long she
had been living in the home, and whether anyone outside the immediate household had been aware of the situation.
Each interview became another piece of a much larger puzzle. At the same time, social workers and child welfare professionals became involved. Recovering a missing child involves much more than a police investigation. The child's physical health, emotional well-being, educational needs, and long-term safety all become immediate priorities. After spending years outside the legal custody arrangement established by the courts, Paislee needed stability above all else. Fortunately, officials reported that she appeared to be in good physical condition when she was recovered. That was welcome news in a case that could have ended.
While investigators continued examining the legal aspects of the disappearance, medical professionals and child welfare experts focused
on helping her transition into a safe environment. The criminal investigation, however, continued to move forward. Authorities announced that
several adults connected to the case faced charges related to custodial interference and actions surrounding Paislee's concealment. These charges
reflected the allegation that legal custody orders had been deliberately violated and that efforts had been made to prevent
authorities from recovering the child. As with any criminal case, The charges represented allegations that would proceed through the
legal system, where defendants are entitled to due process and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. The legal proceedings also highlighted an important distinction that is often misunderstood by the public. When people hear the phrase kidnapping, this is what they think of. They often imagine a stranger abducting a child from a playground or parking lot. Family abductions are different. They
frequently arise from custody disputes in which one parent or another relative unlawfully keeps or conceals a child despite
court orders. While the circumstances differ from stranger abductions, the impact on the child and the legal consequences can still be profound. As news of Paislee's recovery spread across the United States, the case quickly attracted national media attention. Many people were astonished by one particular detail. Police had reportedly visited the same property before without finding. That fact sparked countless questions. Had investigators made mistakes during earlier searches? Had the adults become increasingly confident each time officers left empty-handed? Or did the hidden locations simply evade detection until a fresh examination revealed
what had previously gone unnoticed? Law enforcement officials have emphasized that investigations evolve as new information becomes available. Searches
are conducted based on the evidence, legal authority, and circumstances that exist at the time. In this case, the renewed search, combined with an officer's careful observation of the staircase, ultimately led to Paislee's recovery. The discovery also underscored a lesson familiar to experienced investigators. Persistence matters. Some missing person cases are solved not because of a
dramatic confession or a lucky break, but because detectives refuse to abandon leads that continue to point in a particular
direction. Revisiting locations, re-interviewing witnesses, and reconsidering earlier assumptions can sometimes uncover evidence that was previously missed. For the community of Saugerties, the recovery brought a mixture of relief and disbelief. Residents who had followed the case for years learned that the child everyone had been searching for had been living within their own community.
It was a sobering reminder that extraordinary events can occur behind the doors of otherwise ordinary-looking homes. The case
also prompted broader discussions among legal experts and child advocates. Could family court systems do more to prevent long-term custodial interference? Are there additional resources that should be available when a child disappears during a custody dispute? How can law enforcement agencies improve coordination in these cases without infringing on the legal rights of families involved?
In ongoing custody disagreements, there are no simple answers. Every family situation is different, and every investigation presents unique
challenges. However, the recovery of Paislee demonstrated that cooperation between local law enforcement, child welfare agencies, prosecutors, and the compartment itself, but the determination of the investigators who returned to the case despite previous disappointments. It would have been easy to conclude that the child had been moved elsewhere. Instead, officers followed new information, remained open to revisiting earlier conclusions, and ultimately discovered the truth. For Paislee, the focus after her recovery shifted away from the
headlines. The public naturally became fascinated by the dramatic circumstances surrounding her discovery. But for the child at the
center of the story, what mattered most was rebuilding a sense of normalcy. Children who experience prolonged disruptions in their living situations often require time, support, and stability to adjust. Those efforts take place quietly, away from television cameras and news reports. As investigators finalized their reports, prosecutors prepared the legal case, and the community reflected on what had happened. One fact remained undeniable. A child who had been missing for more than 2 years had been found alive. That outcome is unfortunately rare in long-term missing child investigations and provided hope that persistence and careful investigative work can make a difference even after years have passed. Yet, even after the rescue, many questions lingered. What conversations took place inside that house during those years? How did those involved justify keeping a child
hidden from the outside world? What impact would those lost years have on Paislee's future? Some of those questions
may never be answered publicly, while others remain part of court records and private family matters. As a reminder that missing child investigations are not always defined by distant locations or unknown offenders. Sometimes, the challenge is recognizing that the truth may be much closer than anyone imagines, hidden not across the country, but behind the walls of a familiar home. As the immediate shock of Paislee's recovery began to settle, the focus naturally shifted from where she had been found to what would happen next. For law enforcement, the successful recovery marked the conclusion of an intensive missing child investigation. For prosecutors, however, the legal process was only beginning. Investigators spent months organizing evidence, reviewing interviews, documenting the scene where Paislee was discovered, and reconstructing a timeline that stretched back.
more than 2 years. Every report, photograph, witness statement, and court document would become part of understanding exactly how
A child who had been the subject of a missing person investigation remained concealed for so long. Authorities alleged that the adults involved knowingly violated an existing custody order and intentionally kept Paislee from the person who had lawful custody. Those allegations form the basis of the criminal charges filed after her recovery. Like every criminal defendant
in the United States, the individuals charged were entitled to due process, legal representation, and the presumption of innocence.
unless proven guilty in court. That principle is fundamental to the American justice system and remains important regardless of how emotional a case may be. While the legal proceedings moved forward, child welfare professionals concentrated on something equally significant, helping Paislee adjust to a new reality. Children thrive on routine. They rely on predictable schedules, familiar environments, schools, friendships, and supportive adults to develop emotionally and socially. Spending years outside the normal structure of everyday childhood can present unique challenges. Although officials reported that Paislee appeared to be in good physical health, when she was emotional recovery is often a much longer journey than physical recovery. Experts who work with children involved in custody disputes frequently explain that young children may not fully understand the legal conflicts surrounding them. Their world is shaped by the adults they trust. If those adults present a particular version of events, a child may accept it as normal. That does not necessarily mean the child understands why police are searching for them or why
Court orders exist. This is one reason family abduction cases are often so complex. They involve legal disputes, emotional bonds,
and the difficult task of balancing accountability for adults with compassion for the child. The Paislee case also reignited conversations about custodial interference across the United States. While stranger abductions receive enormous public attention, family abductions account for a significant number of missing child reports each year. Many are resolved quickly, but others become prolonged legal and investigative
challenges. These cases often require close cooperation between local police departments, family courts, prosecutors, child protective services, and organizations
dedicated to recovering missing children. Unlike stranger abductions, investigators may already know who is involved. The challenge lies in the courts remains essential when protecting vulnerable children. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the story is not the hidden
Proving where the child is being kept and recovering them safely without escalating the situation. Another important lesson from
this case is the value of persistence in investigative work. Television dramas often portray investigations as a series of dramatic breakthroughs. In reality, many successful cases are solved because investigators continue reviewing old information, revisiting previous assumptions, and acting on new tips even after earlier efforts failed. The officer who noticed something unusual about the staircase was not relying on luck alone. That observation came from careful attention to detail, a quality that experienced investigators develop over years of training and fieldwork. It's also worth remembering that searches are conducted under legal and practical
limitations. Officers cannot simply dismantle every wall or tear apart every floor in every home they enter without appropriate
legal authority or investigative justification. Searches are guided by warrants, available evidence, and the circumstances present at the time. When new information emerges, investigators may return with additional authority or a renewed focus, as happened in Paislee's case. Looking back after the outcome is known can make the answer seem obvious, but investigations rarely feel obvious while they're happening. They feel like this.
They are unfolding. For the community, the case served as a sobering reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The
house where Paislee was found looked like an ordinary residence in an ordinary neighborhood. Neighbors may pass one another every day without knowing what is happening behind closed doors. Most homes contain nothing more than the routines of the daily life, but occasionally extraordinary stories remain hidden in places no one would suspect. The national media quickly focused
on the dramatic image of a child being found beneath a staircase. It was a detail that captured headlines
because it sounded almost unbelievable. Yet, the true significance of the story was never the hiding place itself.
Real story was about the years that led to that moment. The custody dispute, the repeated investigative efforts,
determination of law enforcement, and ultimately, the successful recovery of a child who had been missing for more than 2 years. In the months following her recovery, public attention gradually faded. That is often how high-profile cases unfold. News outlets move on to newer stories, headlines disappear, and social media discussions slow down.
Families involved, and for the child at the center of the case, life continues long after the cameras leave.
Recovery is not a single event. It is an ongoing process that unfolds over months and years. Cases involving
children also remind us of the immense responsibility carried by those who work in child protection. Police officers, investigators,
social workers, family court judges, prosecutors, and child advocates each play a different role, yet all share a common thread.
Ensuring that children are safe. No system is perfect, and every case presents unique challenges. But the successful
recovery of Paislee demonstrates why continued cooperation among these agencies is so important. The case has also become a
point of discussion for those studying missing child investigations. It highlights how family dynamics can complicate searches, how persistence can
ultimately lead to success, and why investigators must remain open to revisiting locations and evidence even after previous searches have produced no results. It is a reminder that investigations are rarely linear. They involve setbacks, dead ends, and difficult decisions before progress is made. For viewers watching this story unfold, there is another takeaway that extends beyond
this single case. Missing child reports should always be taken seriously, even when they involve family members rather than strangers.
Court custody orders exist to protect the best interests of children, and disregarding those orders can have profound legal and personal consequences. When concerns arise that a child may be unlawfully concealed, timely reporting and cooperation with law enforcement can make a critical difference. Ultimately, what makes the Paislee case memorable is not that it resembles a
Hollywood thriller. In many ways, it is the opposite. It is a real-life investigation built on patience, legal
procedures, careful observation, and the determination of investigators who refuse to let the case go cold. There were no
dramatic last-minute chases or cinematic confrontations. Instead, there was a methodical search, a renewed investigation, and one observant
the detective who looked a little closer than before. For Paislee, the most important outcome was simple. She was found.
Alive. In missing child investigations, that is never something to take for granted. Every successful recovery represents countless hours
of investigative work, coordination between agencies, and hope that never completely disappears. While many questions surrounding the family dispute remain private or were addressed through the legal system, the central fact remains unchanged. A child who had been missing for more than 2 years was safely recovered. As this case demonstrates, some of the most remarkable true crime
stories are not defined by mystery alone, but by perseverance. The truth may remain hidden for months or even
years, but sometimes it is uncovered because someone chooses to ask one more question, follow one more lead, or
take one more careful look. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative and appreciate fact-based
coverage of real criminal investigations, consider subscribing for more in-depth true crime documentaries. We examine each case with a focus on verified evidence, documented timelines, and the lessons investigators and communities can learn, because behind every case file is a real person, a real family, and a story that deserves to be told with accuracy and respect.